Hello, everybody. Welcome to SportsBeat on WOUB. I'm Jake Collins, your host for today, and joining me at the desk is
Jamey Spears,
Connor Mallon,
Jack Zwiezinski,
Luke Schmitt.
We have a full show in store for you today. Let's take a glance at today's topics. First, we cover football and soccer's losses to Ball State, along with volleyball ending a double-digit losing streak. Meanwhile, the women's golf team grabs their first victory of the year. Then we dabble into pro and college football recaps and headlines before ending with Upset Watch and our weekly awards. SportsBeat starts right now. Guys, welcome back to the table. We first have to talk about the biggest story across Ohio athletics. Ohio travels to Muncie and loses to Ball State 20-14. Luke, what was the story within this matchup?
This was just a tough watch overall, especially once the game got into the second half, and you really physically saw on the field, the game just got out of hand for OU. They just couldn't move the ball well. I had a point to talk about in the second half. They had 95 total yards. So when you do that, obviously you can't win a football game. And again, another point to talk about with this game, and a point we've kind of talked about all season, how the defense has kind of really been the bright spot. They were the big bright spot in this game. Adonis Williams, Michael Molnar, Cameron Hollowell each had double-digit tackles, but your defense can only last so long stopping offense, if your other side of the ball can't get it done, which is really what I saw in that game.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think the biggest story behind this is Ohio only scored 14 points and special teams struggled throughout the entire game, but also, like you mentioned, offense just kind of died out in the second half. Just what was wrong execution-wise for the Bobcats that was just completely different between the two halves?
I think penalties and protection issues and just like kind of a lack of focus and rhythm really hurt them in that game. If you look at the penalty yards, I'm trying to find it. I think it was 8 penalties for 90 yards on OU. So if you have almost 100 yards of penalties, naturally your offense isn't going to have any momentum. And really, I just really think those penalties hurt them. And you talked about it, Jake. Their special teams has kind of been an issue all season, not just on, field goals and PATs, but also punting and kickoffs has really been an issue. And there was a tweet, highlighted by our showcase reporter, Grant Kiefer, where OU ranks bottom 3 in special teams ratings in all of FBS. And it's worth noting that Oregon State just fired their special teams coordinator, and they were one spot above the Bobcats. So I think special teams is really a concern with this team, and using this as the bye week, I think they really got to hone in their special team efforts.
The bye week is the perfect time for this team to get their feet set and figure out what in the world was going wrong last week. I mean, this was everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. We have seen this team fully capable of putting on a show. They can score big points when they need to. They can put on a highlight reel left, right, and center from offense, defense, but the little mistakes keep piling up. And when the little mistakes keep piling up, you lose a game in Muncie, Indiana to Ball State. And it's just like, you've got a great MAC schedule for the rest of the season. You can't lose another game like this if you want to be in Detroit at the end of the season.
No, and I mean, they were lucky last year, even with the 2 MAC losses, just to even be able to get to Detroit. I mean, most of the time, you could really only afford a single conference loss, especially now since there's no divisions. I mean, that's really the only reason why Ohio got in there was because there was no division, or else Miami would have been that first seed within what used to be the old division. But the thing is, this was a game that Ohio was expected to win by multiple scores. And, they looked really good that first drive. I think they, of course, they missed the field goal. They scored 14 points in that first half. But the thing that was really telling to me was the run game just absolutely collapsed and deflated. I mean, they had like 130 yards in that first quarter, and they only got like 50 or 60 more for the rest of the game. And I'm curious, do you guys think it was a little bit of play calling, or do you think just Ball State just did that good of a job adjusting as the game went on and then completely deflated at halftime?
I think OU has an issue, and this is just an OU thing. I think many sports teams do this, is where they play down, I think, to their opponents a lot. I've noticed this trend this season and even last season where, the games that, you could call a trap game, or the game they go into, you expect them to win by many scores, like Gardner-Webber, this one, they just don't play as compact and as, really with a sense of urgency as they do against teams they won against this year, like West Virginia or even Bowling Green. It really feels like they came out of the gate strong in all those games. But in this Gardner-Webb and Ball State game, they just really lacked that urgency. So I think it goes down to really play calling and also just, having that sense of not taking any game for granted, because that's how it is in college football.
Do we have any alarm in terms of just Coach Brian Smith in general? Just because this is I'm not saying anything like seat getting warmed up or anything. I'm just saying that this is probably the first loss where it's like, this is a bad loss on your resume. And he's only coached now, I believe, 7 games, 6 this year and the 1 bowl game last year. Is this kind of just like a learning experience for him, just transitioning as a head coach still?
I 100% think so. Brian Smith is still a fairly fresh head coach. This is his first head coaching position, if I'm not mistaken. So there are mistakes that a fresh head coach will make that we can kind of excuse as rookie mistakes. I do think there is some concern when it comes to over-reliance on one side of the playbook over the other. If the run game slows down, we rely too heavily on the pass game. If the pass game's not working, we rely too heavily on the run game, and sometimes those just don't seem to work. The biggest ability that the Bobcats have is moving down the field in a variety of ways. We have a broad offense with a ton of really talented players at all skill positions, and being able to keep a defense on their heels and utilize the entire playbook is something that I've seen OU do incredibly well. When you over-rely on one particular piece of the offense, it very clearly leaves you one-dimensional, and it leaves your opposing defense every opportunity to take advantage of that situation. It just needs to stay on the fact that they need to leave the playbook open.
Yeah, and with that, I mean, the biggest struggle is you got to get more targets in the passing attack. We've seen the potential with Mason Williams. Mason Williams had 8 or 9 receptions last week for nearly 100 yards. Mm-hmm. He only had 1 reception this week for 4 yards. And Jake Bruno was another one after the Rutgers game. It looked like he could be somebody that could step in. So this is a team that could really utilize like the play action game, but I don't think they do it as well as they should. They don't look at the tight ends as major targets. They kind of rely on Chase Hendricks, who had another good game, who bounced back from that Bowling Green game, and Rodney Harris was very productive. But I think with a team that's so heavy in the run game, they got to utilize that play action a little bit more and get these tight ends wide open. I mean, Mason Williams was one of the best, is probably one of the better tight ends in the league, or not in the league, excuse me, but in the MAC conference. And they just need to utilize. I mean, of course, if Darte's out, who's going to be that person on the offense, guys, do you think? They just need to attack more.
I think, honestly, it's a group as a whole, and I think it's the offensive line. We talked about in the last couple of weeks how the offensive line has been kind of shaky, and we saw this again in Ball State. They allowed 4 sacks compared to OU didn't get home at all. So there were just a lot of sacks, a lot of penalties. I think Parker Navarro still has some things to kind of work out, when to scramble, when to throw it away. He definitely kind of struggles with that, I feel like, a little bit. So there's definitely a lot of little mistakes, but there's also, things as like position groups that they can get better at. And like you said, Jake, like over-reliance on one side of the ball, running or passing, they kind of see like, oh, hey, here's a running play that works. Let's run the ball. And then the running play, I don't know. I think they need a better blend of play calling. And I also want to see, the offensive line really kick it in a high gear.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like you mentioned, I'm glad you brought up the pass rush, because that was a talking point after Gardner-Webb was they had no sacks. And then we immediately saw them bounce back against Bowling Green with 5. There was a bunch of takeaways, a bunch of tackle for losses. And we just didn't see that in Ball State. So it's going to be something that they have to carry throughout the rest of the season. But with that being said, of course, Ohio football does not have a game this week. They're on a bye, so it's plenty of time for them to recover durability and condition-wise and just bounce back offensively, see what the problems are within that team. But now to go to our next segment, we're going to talk about OU volleyball. So for this segment, they had quite a busy week, Jamey. From Friday to Tuesday, we saw 3 separate games. Break it down for us.
Yeah, the Bobcats hosted Akron on Friday and Buffalo on Saturday. They dropped both of those matches 3-1. Let's just start off with Akron. Akron came into this match 8-6, and Ohio is coming off 9 straight losses. Bailey Blair once again led the team in kills with 18, but all 4 sets were super entertaining. I feel like they were really close, and I feel like the Bobcats held their own right there. And I was really impressed with their striking and capitalizing on mistakes made by Akron and kind of those late stages of the sets. Then they played Buffalo on Saturday. Buffalo's coming to this 4-9, and same result. Junior Gentry Brown led OU in kills and points, and Buffalo went up 2-0. Ohio got that third set by 8 points and then lost 15-13 in the fourth set to give Buffalo that victory.
Yeah, and I think the most telling stat of this whole thing, especially in the Akron game, was 3 of those 4 sets were in extended sets, and it just seems like Ohio was doing everything they can to try and steal a game from an Akron team that's outperformed Ohio in terms of just performance and talent this year. Ohio almost stole it. Was that something that you're happy to see, but also disappointed to see how they just couldn't finish in the clutch?
Yeah, and Akron's a good team just overall. I mean, they are 8-6, right around mid, probably upper tier of the MAC. I mean, you see those close games and you think they're so close, but I don't know. It's good, but it's like you said, it's also kind of bad because they can't finish those sets. They can't win these close sets against these good MAC opponents. So it's going to be hard to see.
And I think just another thing with this as well, I mean, we also see it not because, in the Buffalo series, where it was that 5th set, like you mentioned, they dropped 15-13. They've been unable to clutch up, but in terms of the performances, Kendall White had over 100 assists in just 2 games. I mean, her impact, we talked about her a couple weeks ago in week 3. What was her impact like in this game, just be able to record as many assists as she did?
I mean, I think it's just confidence. I think getting your confidence up, you maybe start out slow. Your team starts out with eventually 11 straight losses. I feel like you go into these games and it's what you can do for the team. It's not really about what you can do for yourself, even though it looks good on paper. But I feel like that her performance really helped out the team and kept this Akron game close.
And with that being said, of course, they dropped the 2 games in the convo, but they bounced back and had a positive moment finally in this program. What happened on Tuesday against Kent State?
Yeah, just like you said, Kent State, very mediocre team, just like OU. And they were coming in 2-2 in the MAC. OU eventually swept Kent State in 3 sets, winning 25-23 in set 1, 25-18 in set 2, and then 25-14 in set 3. And just an all-around great performance by the Bobcats. I mean, you really can't beat that. I feel like they needed a spark, and they finally got that momentum. They haven't won a match since September 5th against Chattanooga, and I just feel like the Bobcats held Kent State to make those mistakes. They actually had a negative hitting percentage that limited the Golden Flashes to only 7 kills in the entire match. I mean, you're going to win almost all your matches if you can play that dominant against teams like Kent State, these lower teams, and kind of build that momentum, get your confidence, and who knows what they can do later on in the season.
Jamey, I think you're absolutely right about the momentum. Last time we saw that they last won a game, they followed that with an 11-game losing streak. So I think this is a really pivotal part of their season for them. They have Miami this Friday and Saturday this weekend, and then they have Eastern next week. And both of those are at home. So I think this is going to be a good opportunity for them to try to keep that consistency going in both of those games. Miami is ahead of them in the standings, and Eastern Michigan is the spot below Ohio. So, kind of 2 different teams, but I think this is going to be an important stretch for them to kind of see if that Kent State win was, what they can focus on, what they can build around for the season, or, if there's still some things to iron out and we see another skid, which I hope doesn't happen, and I hope they, can get some more wins down the stretch here.
Yeah, and it's gonna be fun to see what they can do because conference play did just begin, and with that being said, they're not outside of the MAC. I mean, they are outside of the MAC standings for the MAC tournament, but they're within striking distance still. And I think this is something that even Reese mentioned on an episode was they haven't been able to carry that momentum from one set to another. I think there was only 3 times this year so far where they won a set or they won one set and then they won the next set. And with that being said, for them to finally get their first 3-0 sweep of the year, I mean, it's telling to see the progression that we're seeing from Coach Brinkham, from these players like Maddie Long, Bailey Blair, Kendall White, Kendall Hickey. Like, these are players who are producing now to that level where we expect them to see. It's a young team. But I want to go back to you, Jamey, and Luke already kind of mentioned it, but what are we kind of expecting in terms of this doubleheader strictly with Miami?
Yeah, like Luke said, Miami is ahead of OU in basically almost every stat. I mean, they're 9-8, 3-2 in conference. I think this will be a tough battle for the Bobcats. They start the doubleheader on Friday at 6 p.m. and then wrap up the home doubleheader with a 4 p.m. start time on Saturday in the Convo. My biggest things is they need to start out early. I feel like if they start out early and they start out hot and get a couple rallies going, get a couple points on the board, I feel like that's like the key to beat this Redhawks team, who is coming off a 3-0 loss against Ball State on Tuesday. So I think it'll be interesting to see if like OU can hold their own against this Miami offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, just for the sake of the rivalry game, it's, I believe, the first fall sport to finally face Miami in the Battle of the Bricks. So that's always exciting, especially since it's in the Convo. So for the fans back home, you got to be able to check out that series because Battle of the Bricks has always been something fun. But now we are going to go on to our next segment. We're going to be covering OU soccer. And the soccer team, much like the football team, fell to Ball State as well. Jack, what was the story of this game?
So Ohio hosted Ball State and fell to the Cardinals 0-2. I think the biggest thing with this game is that the Bobcats outshot the Cardinals 18-8 with 3 shots on goal and 9 corner kicks, but they weren't able to get any in the net. I think they're able to generate offense at an extreme level. They just can't. They weren't, at least during this game, they weren't able to capitalize on any opportunities. Ball State only had 3 saves, so about 15 shots weren't quite heading towards the net. I think that's the biggest thing with Ball State got their first goal in the 48th minute. Ball ricocheted off the goalpost into the back of the net, and then about 20 minutes later, they hit their second one, and then just weren't able to do anything. We were so close. Haley Jang had a corner kick, got saved with about 10 minutes left. The biggest thing, honestly, with this game was just being unable to capitalize on the opportunities that they can provide themselves on offense. They have shown time and time again, 18 shots, 3 on goal, 9 corner kicks. The biggest thing, they had 6 offsides and 9 fouls, so it might come down a little bit to just cleaning up some of the fundamentals there, penalty-wise, and then just being able to capitalize on those opportunities.
And I think Coach Aaron Rodgers is happy to see that they are at least firing more shots on goal. Offensively, this has been a team that has struggled all year, but I think they just need to find those areas where it's more quality scoring chances, and whether that's just being more physical on the ball and kind of like protecting the ball away from the defenders. That's something that Coach Rodgers has been very vocal about to media, especially for our friends at Bobcat Showcase, that they just need to be more physical and maybe use that physicality to generate more shot opportunities. Some of the goals this year, they have been absolute highlight goals just because they're farther away outside of the box, and they just got to attack the box more, get closer to the net, and then, of course, just beat the goalie. So in terms of that being said, Jack, what are the adjustments? We saw Ball State also out, just the halftime adjustments they made, and then, of course, Addie Chester for Ball State took over. What is Ohio going to need to learn from that first half leading into the second half going forward?
I think working with kind of trying to work on their shots and get more shot opportunities, play a little more physical. I think they need to balance playing physically with playing too physical because, you see those 9 penalties definitely came from a side effect of playing very physically, which they're not quite used to. I think it might take them a little bit to really get their feet on the ground. That I do like that, like you had said, they're working on their shots, trying to shoot more. I think some of it's just maybe waiting and trying to find better shot selection rather than just, there's an opening, let me fire it. Maybe looking and being like, okay, I have an opening, but somebody down on the field later has a way better opening. Let me pass it out to them, get their kick in. I think it's just a little bit of getting everything together, really getting their feet on the ground, and getting used to this new kind of play style they're shooting for.
Yeah, and going into this next game, we got to go to the previews now. Ohio gets to play Kent State under the lights. What does this matchup have for us?
So the Bobcats will head to Zoller Field in Kent to face off against the Golden Flashes. The Flashes are coming off a tie against Miami and a win over Akron, who are up there in the MAC rankings. So this is a solid team. Miami's third in the MAC, so tying with them is very impressive. The Bobcats are going to have to lock in. The biggest thing is Kent State midfielder Samantha Miller is leading the team in just about every stat. They need to be able to shut her down a little bit, kind of stop her from being able to affect the field to the level that she's shown she can. They need to focus on finishing and capitalizing on those offensive opportunities that we've seen that they can generate. Work on the physicality a little bit, balance that line of, like I said earlier, physical and too physical. Because eventually, the refs will call on that over and over and over again. You can't have that happen. That will give Kent State more opportunities to score, which they will take. They need a win badly. It's been a while since they've gotten their last win.
I believe in their last 5 games they might have only had one victory.
Central Michigan on September 4th, which they really need to lock in for this one and just really get their feet moving, get on the ground, get used to the play style.
And we know how strong they are defensively. We know the goaltending Celeste Sloma could be, and the defensemen out there really do a good job shutting down teams. They just need to be able to outscore them. We have yet to see Ohio score multiple games in probably like a month and a half now. But with that being said, what it is kind of entitled for this next game. Of course, they have the game on Thursday against Kent State at 7, but Sunday they have a game against Toledo. What does that matchup look like?
Yeah, so they're looking to take down conference opponent Toledo this Sunday at 1 p.m. This is a must-win game. They're playing in Toledo. It'll be almost a month on the day since their last win on Sunday. They beat CMU, who's currently the lowest-ranked team in the MAC. They've tied 3 times and lost twice. Toledo's 3-4-5 and 0-3-3. This should be a winnable game. Defense will be important, which we've seen that they can handle. Toledo's Morgan Spittler has 4 goals on the season and can generate insane pressure on Celeste Sloma in that defense. I think if they can really start getting their feet moving against Kent State, I think this should be a very winnable game for this squad.
And yeah, Jay, kind of going back to what you just said, you're right. They haven't scored multiple goals in a game since their August 28th game against Oakland. And again, kind of just shout out the defense and goalkeeping. Most of these goals, at least going back to I think it was the Indiana game in early September, where all the goals following that game came in the second half. So the defense in goalkeeping is really doing their job in the first. It's then really up to the offense. Get the goals in the second half and save Sloma.
Do you think any of that is just kind of, in a way, being outcoached with failing to match those adjustments? Because it seems like all these other teams, any other opponent that Ohio has, they're making these adjustments and they're scoring, but Ohio can't match it. Do you think that's coaching at any point?
I think you're right. I think that's big on all the coaches who are out coaching it. I think making those adjustments at half and scoring in the second half of the game after seeing what OU gives you is something that Aaron Rodgers has to look at. He's at least from my perspective, he's seen all these last couple games how teams really adjust in the second half, and that's when they start firing shots and making those shots. So I think he really has to do a big he really has to have the team focus on that second half effort.
Yeah, and he should, especially in the series where, Kent State has always been a tough matchup for the Bobcats. I believe Kent State leads that series all time. But especially with Toledo, who, like you mentioned, Jack, is winless so far in the MAC conference. So this is a series that Ohio soccer is going to need to, show some life if they want to make that MAC put or that MAC conference tournament push. But now we're going to go to our next segment, and we're going to give them some recognition for the first time this year. It is OU Women's Golf. They won the Rocket Classic in Toledo. This team was leading after day 1 when they had their first 2 rounds, but day 2 was canceled, so they finalized it from day 1's results. They beat Indiana State by a single stroke, and as well as the other teams, it was Toledo, Purdue Fort Wayne, and Detroit Mercy. So this is the women's golf team's first victory of the year. We saw 3 Bobcats finish inside the top 5 to help lead the Bobcats to victory. Of course, this was headlined by Katie Husted, Morgan Rogers, and Mackenzie McCree. Husted actually shot +4 in round 1 and then shot even on round 2, which was the best of all golfers in round 2. So fantastic job for this team. They Husted finished 2nd overall on the leaderboard. Rogers finished 4th. McCree finished 5th. So we just wanted to quickly give a congratulations to the women's golf team for winning the Rocket Classic. They won it last year as well. So, going into uncharted territory, enemy territory, where Toledo hosts this event and win this. So good job on them. They will play at the Dayton Flyer Invitational. 13 teams are set to compete, so that's going to be a fun little event. But now we're going to go to our next segment. MLB playoffs are now in the divisional round. We saw 4 teams eliminated after the wild card series, including both Ohio teams. But we got to talk about the current series going on. Jamey, what's the update with every single series?
Yeah, so we're going to start out with the Yankees Blue Jays. It is currently 2-1. Blue Jays won 10-1 the first on game 1. They won 13-7 game 2. And then the Yankees ended up winning 9-6 last night. And I feel like that third game was kind of like the momentum change. And I feel like Aaron Judge, I feel like they're going to come back in this game. And just because I feel like the Yankees pitching has been really good, and I feel like their offense is actually, I guess their pitching hasn't been good, but I feel like their offense is going to make up for that pitching. Yesterday, the Yankees were down 6-3, and it was just kind of a pop-up in the air, and the Blue Jays dropped it, and that led to an Aaron Judge 3-run home run to tie up the game, and it was just all Yankees from there.
And like you mentioned, this is the most momentum shift that they needed in Game 3 because that offense was lackluster those first 2 games. I'm kind of curious to think, and from your perspective, this has always been a close series within the regular season, but what is it going to be for the Yankees to kind of break through? Of course, at the time of this recording, Game 4 hasn't started yet. What are they going to need to do in Game 4 to set up their matchup for Game 5?
I think they have the advantage because they're playing at home. They're playing in a hostile environment, probably the second or first hostile environment if you want to put the Phillies up there too. No bias, but I think that the Yankees, if they can get their offense going, they can start out. I know it's really simple to say, but if they can start out early and they can get a 1-run lead, 2-run lead, and kind of build from there, I think they can easily win this game 2-0 if they want to. I mean, I think their pitching is good enough to keep that 2-0 lead.
Who's going to be that player for either team, for Yankees or Blue Jays, that steps out? Of course, you can't mention Aaron Judge. Give me a different name other than an MVP contender.
Well, I think for the Blue Jays, it's definitely been Vlad in this series. I think he hit a home run the first game, and I think that he's the Aaron Judge of the Blue Jays. I mean, that's just plain and simple. And, I mean, I have to say Aaron Judge for the Yankees. I mean, he's just the best player on the team, and there's no doubt about that.
So now for the next series, the one game that we have seen concluded, at least on Wednesday, was Detroit winning Game 4, 9-3 against the Mariners. That series is tied. What have you seen so far in this series that's been completely even so far?
Yeah, I've seen that I really like this series. I think this is probably the best, the closest competition level, maybe besides the Phillies-Dodgers, which we'll get to later. And in Game 1, Detroit won 3-2. But in Game 2, the Mariners won 3-2. So it's really balanced. And with Jorge Polanco's 2 solo shots in Game 2, that kind of set the Mariners over them. And I think that today was a pitching duel. I think that the Detroit Tigers pitching went out there. They needed what they needed to do and got runs later in the inning. They got 3 runs in the 5th, 4 runs in the 6th, and then tacked on 2 insurance runs in the 7th and 8th. And I think it's going to come down to who's pitching tomorrow and who's going to do better than the other pitcher.
Yeah, and I'm guessing Detroit's going to do probably anything they can to see if Skubal can at least, if he's not starting, at least relieve a little bit But I'm curious in terms of Seattle, and it was kind of a thing that took me by surprise. Do you think Seattle's bullpen can last in this series? They have a pretty decent starting core, but it seems like that bullpen is a little bit shaky in those late stages of the game.
Well, it just came out to be that Tariq Skubal is pitching on tomorrow, Friday, October 10th, so against George Kirby for Seattle, which has been really impressive this year as well. But I don't think they're going to be able to contend with Tariq Skubal. I said it last week, and he was the momentum changer. He shifted the momentum towards the Tigers, and I don't think that Seattle's going to be able to hang with Tariq Skubal.
It's going to be interesting to see. Of course, a fun Game 5, a series where one team will have their season end, and the next team will punch their first ticket into what will be the ALCS for the winner of that series. We're going to go on to the next series. We're going to talk about the NL, the number 1 seed versus the 4 seed. Brewers and Cubs are currently active. I believe the score is 4-2 right now. Cubs finally have a lead in the series. But what have we seen so far from this first 2 games? It just seems like Milwaukee is still carrying that regular season momentum.
Yeah, and they're starting out early. I mean, they scored 6 runs in the first inning in Game 1 of versus the Cubs, and that's going to win you a lot of ball games. I mean, they held on to the win against Chicago, and then Chicago also lost Game 2, 7-3, and all 7 of Milwaukee's runs came off of home runs. I mean, that's impressive.
For this series, it seems like, guessing that Chicago protects this lead, assuming they do. They might not. Milwaukee's a tough team. What will Chicago need to do for games 4 and 5 to not only keep the series alive, but then also clinch the series and punch it to the NLCS?
I mean, just limiting the home run balls and the first early inning mistakes. If they can do that, they will have a chance because they've played each other the most out of any teams. I mean, they're in their in their division, so they play them a lot more than other teams. So they know this Brewers team and what they can do and who's their best player, who they can't hit against. And I think if they can if their pitching can limit those runs early and home runs, they can have a chance to win this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like across from all series, it seems like the home field advantage is vital in the playoffs. But for one team in general, and it's the last series we haven't talked about, Philadelphia Phillies had a rough 2 games in their home stint. What happened there?
Yeah, and you would think that this being the most hostile environment, sorry Yankees fans, it's definitely the most hostile because playoffs in Philly are absolutely a different breed. And it's just the Dodgers, though. I mean, you can't contend against the Dodgers when they're paying 2 guys $1.1 billion, and the Phillies are like the 4th highest paid team, and they can, like, the difference between the number 1 and number 4 is absolutely mind-blowing. And then you put Roki Sasaki out there in the bullpen, and he got his first 2 ever saves. I know he's a starting pitcher, and he's been really dominant, but he got his first 2 saves. He's the first person ever to get them in the playoffs.
What do you think Philadelphia is going to need to do to survive this series, or do you think LA's kind of it's going to clinch it tonight?
Yeah, they will clinch it tonight, and I just feel like the Phillies, especially being in LA, it's going to be hard for them to bounce back. They have, especially with Aaron Nola. I'm not a big old Aaron Nola fan. He just can't perform in big time moments, and he only pitches like 92 miles an hour, and that's just not impressive with nowadays pitching. And then the Dodgers have Yamamoto pitching. So, I mean, that's going to be a good duel. I think Aaron Nola is only going to give up maybe 1 or 2 runs, but I think those 1 or 2 runs is what's going to decide the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And, of course, LA, one of the best teams when it comes to playing within their own city, playing at home, 52-29, just an impressive record. So, hate to say it, Jamey, I know you're a Phillies fan, but it seems like LA is going to close the series out.
Easily.
If not tonight, probably tomorrow. But on to our next pro league, NFL. Connor, what do you have for us? I mean, we saw an amazing Thursday night football game to start out this Week 5 slate.
We got a great slate on Thursday, and well, Jake, there's a lot of good football and a lot of bad football. I cannot lie to you, brother. Thursday night football was an absolute showing. I mean, the Niners and the Rams had a pretty much the best kind of shootout you can ask for from the NFC. The Kyron Williams fumble at the goal line just ends up losing it for for the Rams in a real disappointing loss for them. I mean, the 49ers are sitting there without Brock Purdy, without Joey Bosa, and without George Kittle. And, I mean, the Niners were being led in every statistical category by the Rams. I mean, Matthew Stafford threw for 389 yards and 3 touchdowns, and Kyron Williams was outgaining Christian McCaffrey on less carries. But once again, Kyle Shanahan proves that a roster that he can keep together with scotch tape and a dream can still pull out a fantastic win in the clutch.
And it seems like this Niners defense is just so stout when they need to be. It's kind of that bend, don't break mentality. And we saw it on there when Kyron Williams had the ball punched out right at the goal line. And that was just a fantastic play. So I'm kind of surprised to see how well San Francisco has done. Like you mentioned, they're losing Kittle, they're losing Bosa, they don't have Purdy right now.
Fred Warner is keeping that defense dialed together right now, and it is incredible to see his leadership as they continue to kind of fight for their way in the NFC, because they're still doing quite well in their division, but they just need to keep staying alive, which is the hardest part for them this year.
Yeah, especially Bosa's out for the rest of the year, and we're still kind of waiting to see when Purdy and Kittle come back. But I mean, Mac Jones this is kind of like what we're seeing more of. We're kind of seeing these younger quarterbacks become veteran presence, and they're finally developing as players expected of them. I know Mac Jones was a Pro Bowler his rookie year, but he was sent to the depths of you-know-what in that Patriots roster, and he's bounced back. So this is a fantastic revitalization for Mac Jones and the Niners team. But in terms of the other stout games that we saw from this weekend, I mean, we had a classic there in Seattle. What occurred there?
Oh my gosh, an all-time matchup in the uniforms and on the field. I mean, we got the absolute classics of the Bucks in the white and orange jerseys with the Seahawks in those gorgeous royal blue and greens. And let's be real here. Emeka Egbuka versus JSN. Jack and I were having this conversation earlier today. I would like to put my official hat in the ring and call Ohio State is wide receiver U after seeing the absolute fireworks show that was that matchup. I mean, 720 combined passing yards between Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, 163 yards for Emeka Egbuka, 2 touchdowns, 132 yards and a touchdown for JSN. I mean, both teams are, first of all, big credit to the offensive lines for only giving up 1 sack between the two teams, giving their quarterbacks the opportunity to really light each other up. I mean, the Bucs sit at the top of a very, very winnable NFC South, and the Seahawks have every opportunity to kind of snipe that top spot from the 49ers as they continue to be battered and bruised. But at the end of the day, we got to say, I'm another hat in the ring moment. As much as I wanted to hear Ashton Genty's name get called at the end of the year, I think Emeka Egbuka might be my solid lock for Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, consistently, I know you kind of gave into it a couple of weeks ago where you
he
said
looks so good.
It's incredible.
Emeka, his production is just off the charts right now for a rookie, and he's done a fantastic job. But also, it's great to see how well the Buckeyes have played in the league. I mean, especially in that receiver core. But to go on to one final game, and this was a primetime game, Monday night, Trevor Lawrence, and ever since I questioned Trevor Lawrence, I believe it was week 2, where I was like, I don't think Jacksonville and Trevor Lawrence are progressing. They're 4-1 now. I mean, that was any bit of adversity and anything that they needed to prove, they showed out in that game with that game-winning drive.
They really did. I mean, Trevor Lawrence has continued to prove that he is a incredible NFL talent, and I will continue to sing his praises above far past his career in college. I mean, Kansas City falling to 3-2, and the Jags are now 4-1 after Trevor Lawrence. I mean, an absolutely fantastic game-winning drive out of him after Jacksonville was outgained, outpossessed, lost the turnover battle, and was statistically worse on 3rd down. Now, here's the point that needs to be made. Kansas City gave up 13 penalties for 109 yards. That is horrendous, diabolical. We can't. This is a professional football team, and we're out here throwing up high school penalty numbers. And you're losing that to a Jacksonville team who's only giving up 25 penalty yards, and you're letting them play run circles around you. Travis Hunter was putting on a show. He's making his case for Rookie of the Year despite the Emeka Ibuka agenda. I mean, the Jags are... Unfortunately, the way the Colts have performed, they're going to lock in that top spot in the AFC West. But, I mean, the Jags have every opportunity... Or, excuse me, not the AFC West. The Jags are more or less locking themselves into a wild card spot unless the Colts drop another game. The Chiefs are third in the AFC West despite having the highest scoring offense and just do not look good. There are so many questions we have about them.
Yeah, and it's very surprising to see how well the AFC South has been producing, especially with the Colts and Jags. But we first got to go in... Before we go into our previews, we got to talk about the two Ohio teams. Cleveland, international battle, and they lost very close battle to Minnesota. Jack, Connor, what do you guys got for me?
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay, I will. If you don't want to, I will.
Winnable game.
That was a winnable game. They should have won that game. The defense looked amazing. The offense actually got up and running and didn't look terrible. Dylan Gabriel looked good.
He didn't turn the ball over. He threw for almost 200 yards, averaged about 10 yards of completion. But, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it's poor clock management, dumb penalties, and bad mistakes that sell them to a team that they should have beat in
There
London.
was that string of timeouts, but Quinshon Judkins is incredible. Harold Fannon's looked great. I'm excited for where this team will go with Dylan Gabriel under center more often.
And then for the other Ohio team, Jamey, I got to talk with you. Cincinnati, it's not looking good, brother. I mean, they lost. That was a bad loss against Detroit, respectfully.
Yeah, David Montgomery, I mean, he came home to Cincinnati and absolutely ran all over defense, threw a touchdown. He did whatever he wanted to do. I mean, Jamar Chase did really good, though. I mean, we were down 45-6, but it doesn't matter. I mean, the Bengals, let's just tank.
Well, they
made a move that might not be tanking.
When we go to read and react, we'll kind of there'll be a headline that kind of admits that.
Okay, we'll chat about that in a little bit later.
But of course, going into the previews of this game, I'm going to quickly go through them. Seahawks Jags is going to be a matchup that's going to be a very good game, and then prime time we're going to see Lions and Chiefs, I believe, on Sunday night. And then even in that same day, we have a battle of 2 4-1 teams, being the Niners and the Buccaneers. Great matchup for both teams. I mean, injury-riddled Niners and Buccaneers that love playing in one-possession games. And that's going to be this is a fun slate for NFL. I'm excited to see how it does. But now with that being said, Jamey, you kind of teed it up for us. I'm going to throw it right back at you. Bengals, they have decided to trade for Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco is now a Cincinnati Bengal. What does that mean to you?
It's weird because growing up, I always watched Joe Flacco, and he was dicing up the whole Bengals secondary with Anquan Bolden, all those guys, back with the Ravens. And then I watched him dice up the Bengals once again with the Browns. And great, the Bengals would probably win most of the time, but he still threw for 500 yards every single game against the Bengals. Now he's with the Bengals, and he's probably gonna get injured the first play of the game because the Bengals offensive line is absolutely garbage. They can't even protect Jake Browning or Joe Burrow. And I mean, to be fair, Joe Flacco will throw 2 picks a game, but he'll probably throw 4 touchdowns. So we're not getting that from Jake Browning. We're getting 4 picks, 2 touchdowns, and I think the Bengals could do something with this.
I don't think so, but anyway. But the thing is, I'm glad you actually brought it up. I didn't even think about it. That pass protection against this Green Bay front 7 is going to be probably disgusting. Now, we did see, of course, Joe beat the Packers with Cleveland, but now I got to go back to you guys, the Cleveland fans. I mean, what does this mean to you? Is it kind of nice to see that the QB room is less dense?
I mean, it's nice to see the QB room have a few less people in it because we started the season with 7 people sitting in that room. But, I mean, this is, like, I had it written in the notes from the Cincinnati section. This is, like, the most trade of all time. It's the first trade between the Browns and Bengals since they've moved back to Cleveland in 1999. And Joe Flacco joins Jeff Driscoll as the only quarterback to start for the Browns and the Bengals. And he's the only one to start for 3 out of the 4 teams in the AFC North. Like, this is just...
I mean, a nice little immaculate grid find for the people in the future. But now to go to our next Read and React headline. Formula One driver Carlos Sainz has criticized F1 broadcasts for paying attention to celebrities and girlfriends more than the racing action itself. Connor, I know you're an F1 fan. I mean, we saw Sainz was disappointed because none of his overtakes were covered in the broadcast, and neither was Lewis Hamilton losing a 50-second gap for 7th position against Fernando Alonso. What do you think about this?
I think that, unfortunately, to an extent, Formula One has gotten lost in its own spectacle. I mean, there are so many big names in and around the sport, and it has become so much more than the drivers and the cars. It's unfortunate to see the sport itself getting sidelined for the people around it. And I think that Sides makes a fantastic point that, like, these are important moments to the race itself, even if it is, like, some of these overtakes came late in the race, and Lewis Hamilton dropped his 50 seconds pretty late in the lappage. But at the end of the day, like, these are still important things that the people need to know about. We can't be throwing 40 seconds to whose girlfriend is sitting in the box seats. Like,
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, Carlos Sainz started dead last after, I believe, a starting grid penalty, and he made all his way up to 10th and was able to get into the points. So it was a fantastic drive by him, but Sainz didn't get that proper recognition because he's a talented driver in way better equipment he's a talented driver who's not in as good as equipment as he should be. But with that being said, I mean, like you mentioned, it's just the whole spectacle, the thing. Like, Netflix was the one who kind of picked him up with the Drive to Survive series, and that's what's grown in America. But with it being an international racing series, like you mentioned, they're focusing too much on what international celebrity is there. So it's going to be something to see how F1 responds, or if they will even punish Carlos Sainz for that. But now for another headline, Jamey, I'm going to go to you. Conor McGregor is suspended for 18 months by the UFC and the Combat Sports anti-doping program for not showing up to a couple test sessions to take a drug test. And he won't be back until March 2026 because they began his suspension back in September 2024. So from your perspective, is this the end for McGregor? I mean, he hasn't fought since 2021, but there's some buzz he might be on that White House fight card.
Yeah, he's definitely coming back. I think Conor McGregor, main event at the White House, would go absolutely crazy for the fans, especially being on that Paramount Plus network now. I feel like that $7 billion contract that Dana White signed with Paramount Plus will help this, and this could potentially be the biggest streamed event that in UFC history, especially if Conor McGregor's the main event or co-main event. I think just his headline, especially not seeing him since 2021, like you mentioned, and he'll be back. Don't worry.
He has to look a little rusty. Plus, he's going to be 39 by the time of the next fight, but he's the notorious, that is Conor McGregor, who dominated UFC in those late 2010s. But now for our next headline, guys, I'm pretty surprised by this one. NCAA Division I has voted to allow college athletes to bet on professional sports. And now this is a process that very likely can lift the restrictions that have always been in place. But they're still waiting on Division II and Division III to vote on this as well. What's our reaction to this? Are we kind of shocked?
I think this could get out of hand, like really fast. Do we consider college professional sport? Like, could they bet on their own game? I think that's where they're the issue. If you can bet on your own game and determine the outcome, like we've seen with Jonte Porter and other people who bet like that, like it just ruins the sport. And I like sports betting. I don't personally sports bet, but I like how there's a big community around it. But allowing the athletes to kind of almost control the outcome of the script of the game, I don't really like that at all.
I think there is a inherent danger in allowing college athletes who are given large sums of money through sponsorship deals and NIL access to gambling at an unrestricted level. Even if it's not, like Luke, you mentioned that they would possibly, if they have the opportunity to gamble on themselves, throwing that out the window, if they have the opportunity to gamble on anything, it could be ping pong, horse racing, variant underwater basket weaving. These guys are being handed tons of money, and the opportunity that they have to gamble it and develop a very dangerous habit or addiction is not good.
Yeah.
Especially when we live in a society that is completely dominated by sports betting ads on every single platform, on every single game. It's a problem with the system, and you're opening it up to more and more possible issues.
Yeah, no, I agree with both of you. I think with how widespread sports gambling is, especially with sports, I feel like allowing athletes to gamble on professional sports does kind of create a slippery slope there. I also feel like it sends a very mixed message of, okay, yeah, you guys are fine to bet on whatever professional games you want, but if you bet on your own game, we are going to take the harshest restrictions possible. I feel like it's just way easier to just not allow athletes to gamble, period, or just scale back the widespread push of sports gambling that we've seen in the past few years.
And it feels like it just came out of nowhere. And I loved what everyone said at the table. I mean, it's just as easy as sliding one tab, and now you're betting on collegiate sports. I mean, it is right there. So like all three of you guys mentioned, it's a slippery slope. And whether that's betting on their own sport or just getting into a gambling addiction in general, that's going to be something to watch out for that could very easily slap the NCAA in the face within a year and a half or so. So it's going to be a storyline that we're going to have to follow. Of course, both Division II and Division III still got to vote on it, but that's going to be it for a Read and React segment. Now it's time for college football. We got to talk about the notable games headlined by number 10 Alabama rolling over number 16 Vanderbilt 30-14. Nothing really much to say there other than it was kind of expected. I mean, Alabama in Tuscaloosa, inviting Vanderbilt, who's never been a historically competitive program. Alabama rolled over them. But I'm kind of interested. What do you guys have to say about this matchup?
Reese called it a trap game for his Upset Watch segment, and I think it had every opportunity to be a trap game when you have the number 10 team bring it in the number 16 team. Diego Pavia is a fantastic quarterback. We've seen him play incredibly well, but not every team falls for the trap game. And once again, Alabama proves that they are capable of jumping the trap, even when it is Vanderbilt.
Do we think that Ty Simpson is the Heisman frontrunner right now? Because this is a storyline I've seen a lot, especially after this Vanderbilt game, played pretty well. There hasn't been a clear-cut dominating guy, I should say, like no obvious frontrunner. I don't know. What do you guys think?
He's not really a front runner, but I feel like he's right there with it. I think it's Carson Beck of Miami. I think he's there. I mean, he has all the right stats, all the right tools. I mean, he is winning games, and I know Ty Simpson is been doing similarly the closest thing to Carson Beck, but I feel like Carson Beck's that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of which, let's just go to the next game. I mean, you mentioned it, Carson Beck and in Miami. They just beat number 18 Florida State in a rivalry game last week, 28-22. Florida State scored a lot of their points super late, so this Miami team actually had a dominant performance throughout, and they've been strong all year. Do we think this is the easy front runner for the ACC and very probable to get a first-round bye in the college football playoff?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're easily the ACC champion with, I mean, I don't know. Georgia Tech's right there, too, as well.
Watch out for the nerd school. They could always get you.
Yeah.
They could, but I think with Carson Beck under center, he has that experience with Georgia. He's been to those big-time games. He's played better teams than the ACC has to offer. I think that with his experience, with his play, that they're easily just going to go through this whole schedule.
And for the next game that we got to talk about, number 7 Penn State went to UCLA and absolutely just dropped a bad game. I mean, 42-37. The Bruins were 0-4 going into this game. Guys, this was the worst this Penn State defense has looked in a long time, especially with the highest paid defensive coordinator in Jim Knowles. And do we think this is the worst loss in the James Franklin era up to this point?
I mean, this is the first win for a UCLA team that was struggling. And shout out to the head coach. I saw some good stuff in interviews with him. He seems like a really cool guy. I'm glad he got his opportunity to shine against the Lions. I think this is a terrible loss for Penn State. You know, we saw Penn State and Texas both fall out of the top 25 this week. This is just brutal for them. I mean, for a James Franklin, you know, looking at his career, I mean, this loss is it's bad. And it's hard because they didn't even really score most of their points until the latter half of the game. They had, I think 30 points in the second half, and they were down, I think, 27-7 at half. So, UCLA really put them away early. They kind of came back to fight, but, man, Penn State, Drew Aller, they really kind of fell off from the top 25. It'll be really interesting to see what the rest of their schedule looks like after this.
And like you mentioned, number 9 Texas also dropped out of the top 25. That's because they lost to Florida 29-21. Do we think the hype around Texas has just completely ended as a playoff contender? And do you even think the fan base has completely gone against Arch Manning and Steve Sarkisian?
Steve Sarkisian made a really good point in his post-game press conference that I do think we have to take into a bit of effect. Number 9 Texas has played at Ohio State and at Florida. Playing in the shoe and playing in the swamp are impossible places when it comes to stadium energy and fan base impact. Home field advantage is real in college football, and you do have to take into account that Arch Manning's a young quarterback. There's a lot of questions around this Texas offense, especially after losing a decent amount of the team to the end of last season. There's a lot of question marks around this team, but I do think they have the opportunity to get their feet set and kind of move back up in the numbers, especially because, a couple bad losses early in the season. At least get yourself ranked by the end of the season and make a statement once the time comes.
I get losing in the shoe, but, University of South Florida went to the Swamp and beat Florida, and I don't know. They're a group of 5 team. They shouldn't go to the Swamp, beat Florida. But Texas shouldn't go to the Swamp and lose to Florida. They are experienced. They've beat Florida plenty of times. They've beat these big-time teams. They've went to Alabama and have won there. I feel like this is inexcusable for Texas to lose this game.
Do you think most of the pressure now for the rest of the season is going to be put on Sarkisian or Manning?
I think it's
Arch.
Yeah, I think it's Arch Manning too, because he hasn't been performing good, and Sarkisian has been to these big time games with Quinn Ewers, which supposedly Arch Manning's supposed to be better than Quinn Ewers, but I feel like Sarkisian has done what he needs to do, and I don't feel like this is on him.
And then for the next college football game, one final college football recap. Jamey, I'm going to go to you since you were at this game. Just give me a brief sentence. Cincinnati, big dog performance against the 14th ranked Cyclones.
Yeah, Brendan SportsBeat is that guy. He did everything he needed to do to win this game, and Iowa State did not look like the 14th best team in the country. And I think UC should get ranked. I don't see why they're not. I think they're 26. They have the most receiving votes to be in that top 25. But I think UC will. I feel like they have a good run to win that Big 12 championship.
It's going to be interesting. That's a bold take, but
we
talked about it all year. Big 12's wide open across all
open.
teams. But now to go to our preview for the upcoming games this weekend, we have 3 games that involve 2 ranked teams. Which of these 3 are you guys most excited about?
I'm really excited to see OSU Illinois. I'm really excited for OSU just because seeing how Julian Sand has developed this season, just game after game, he just looks better and better. So I'm really excited to see how he looks against Illinois. We know Illinois, they have a long tenured quarterback in Luke Altmaier. So it's kind of 2 opposite ends of the spectrum. You have a signal caller playmaker who's been in college for a long time, knows the game, and then you got basically a first-year quarterback. So I think that quarterback matchup is going to be really fun to watch in that game.
We saw Ohio State kind of struggle against Washington in Seattle, and we saw Illinois pick up a big win against USC in Champaign. Illinois is the home team for this matchup. Do you think Ohio State's going to have a slow start like they did in Seattle?
I think they could. I think that's not out of the question because, going up against, Washington wasn't ranked, but they were 3-1 at the time. So, going up against a team that's played pretty well so far this season, I don't know, it's kind of like we talked about in the Bobcat segment, not playing down to teams. And this isn't even really them playing down. Illinois is ranked. They played USC. They played good teams so far in the season. So I think it's really it's all in the Bobcat. Not the Bobcats. All in the Buckeyes' hands to figure out how they handle this game. And I still think it's going to be a Buckeyes win.
Yep, absolutely. And it probably will be. Buckeyes are, of course, the top-ranked team in the nation. Other ranked teams that we haven't mentioned, Alabama will play number 14 Missouri. And then number 7 Indiana is facing number 3 Oregon. I believe that game is in Eugene for a top 10 battle. That's going to be fun to see. But now we're going to go to our final segment, Upset Watch, our final table segment where we pick our favorite underdog of the week across all sports. We got 2 of them last week. Jamey, you had Alex Pereira. Luke, you had your Virginia pick selections correct. So let's carry the momentum. Jamey, I'm going to go with you. Who do you got for your Upset Watch?
Yeah, we're trying to go for the three-peat, 3 in a row. Kyle Field will have over 102 fans screaming "Powered by Kanye West" this Saturday, but it won't matter because I feel like DJ Lagway will storm onto that field and beat A&M. Florida has a solid defense, and I don't get the hype of A&M. A&M's going to go 8-4. This is going to be their first loss of the year. I feel like that offense is clicking right. I feel like with 5 picks, he kind of adjusted to that, and I feel like as 7.5 point underdogs, Florida will win.
Connor, who do you got for your Upset Watch?
I'm picking an absolute long shot here, but we saw Penn State drop a bad loss last week, so I'm taking Northwestern as a 21.5 point underdog against the Nittany Lions. This is their first 2-game losing streak in 4 years. Northwestern has the common opponent theory over UCLA, so I'm taking an absolute moonshot here for the love of the game. I mean, if Northwestern can get out early, put them on their heels, we might see another fantastic upset.
I think we set a new record for the biggest spread, 21.5 points. But, Luke, you also have a college football selection within the Big Ten. Who do you got?
Yeah, staying with college football, I really like how Malik Washington's playing this year for Maryland, so I have Maryland over Nebraska, the line 6.5. I think that's kind of a big line for a game where I think you have 2 pretty similar teams. I really liked how Maryland looked against Washington last week. Washington kind of came back and won that game. Nebraska looked shaky against Michigan State, so give me the Terps against Nebraska.
Jack, final Upset Watch selection of this table. Who do you got?
I got the Titans over the Raiders. I'm sticking with the NFL. Surely it'll pay off for me one of these times. Look, this Raiders team is coming off some rough losses, and I'm going to apologize, Connor, now.
I'm aware.
They are struggling to find their footing. Geno has 6 touchdowns to 9 interceptions, and he's taken 16 sacks. Brock Bowers is still week to week. Ashton Genty started getting up and running, but I think this Titans team is starting to show some flashes. Cam Ward's starting to show some flashes. I think the fun little fact about this game, the Raiders are 0-2 at home, and the Titans are 0-2 while away. But I think the win against Arizona last week could be a big momentum changer for this Titans team, and I think it'll give them the edge over Vegas this week.
Man, what a sicko game selection. But I'm hoping we could go undefeated in our Upset Watch selection, something we haven't done yet. But finally is our weekly awards where we decide SportsBeat Game and Player of the Week. SportsBeat Game of the Week is Ohio Soccer's road trip to Kent State on Thursday. We talked about it. They're going to be playing under the lights at 7 p.m. Ohio and Kent State have split the series 4-4-2 in their last 10, so good luck to the Bobcats in that game. Our SportsBeat Player of the Week is going to be Kendall White, her second appearance as our SportsBeat Player of the Week. She had 130 assists in the 3 games from this past weekend, so congrats to her. And, of course, being our first player this year with Player of the Week for a second time. That's it for our episode. Thank you for listening to SportsBeat on WOUB. I'm your host, Jake Collins, and joined with me at the table is
Jamey Spears,
Connor Mallon,
Jack Zwiezinski,
And Luke Schmitt.
And you can listen to us on WOUB 1340 AM radio at 9 p.m. or search us online at woub.org/listen. We're also on streaming services like SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Don't forget, follow us on our Instagram at SportsBeatWOUB for more digital content. Thank you for listening to this episode. This has been SportsBeat.